Om Padram Kanebihi Shrunayam Devaha Padram Pashemakasabhye Yajatraha Stire Angais Tustavam Sas Tanubihi Vyamsima Devahitam Yad Yud Ayuha. May we, O graces, divine graces, hear what is auspicious with our ears. O ye who are worthy of worship, may we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we enjoy the life allotted to us. May these manifested graces, offering praise with our bodies, strong of limb, we can continue. May that chief one of all the revealing factors of increasing glory bestow prosperity on us. And may the knower of all bestow prosperity on us. And may one of unobstructed path bestow prosperity on us. May that Brihaspati also bestow prosperity on us. Peace, peace, peace be on the all. So many of you have heard a story that I am very fond of telling. This story is something like a funny story. I heard it first from one of and it has got a moral to it, and it has a good application for spiritual life. So the story goes like this. There was once a rich man who converted all his wealth into elephants. There were 19 elephants. And he went and made a will that he should leave these elephants on his death to his sons, 3 sons. So he registered such a wonderful will. We may wonder, what is the merit of having all your wealth in elephants? But you can imagine that the elephants in his day were something like the Massey Ferguson tractors. These are things that can knock down trees, that can carry goods, and that can even be sold to armies and used as tanks in military warfare. So there was some sense in it, but he had 19 elephants, and the way he divided amongst his sons was a peculiar way, because what he did was, the first son, he gave half of his elephants, and the next man he gave 1/4, and the next one 1/5. So when you put them all together, you have 19 elephants. And as we know, 19 is indivisible, since it's an irregular number, uneven number. And so what is the point of getting 9.5 elephants? Why would we want half an elephant? So before they did any cutting business with 9.5 elephants and, something like, 4/5 of an elephant, or 3 4/5 of an elephant, something like that, and 4 3/4 of an elephant. What use is all of that to you? They sat and puzzled over it. They thought our father was not an unwise person. He must have had something in mind. And while they were puzzling like that, the king came along, or the king's minister came along, with the royal elephants there to water them. And he knew a little bit of mathematics, and he saw things differently. He didn't see 19 elephants to be divided in this way. He saw that if you add one more, there are 20, and 20 is divisible. And so knowing that, he applied his 20th elephant and then said, please make your division. So the eldest son took the half, 10 elephants. The second one took his, 1/4 elephants. So 5 elephants there. And the other one took his 1/5 of an elephant, and it squared off. And the extra elephant, they gave back to the royal prime minister taking the elephants, the king's minister. So what is the lesson for us in spiritual life? When we ask a question, it means there's some problem that we have on our mind, and the subconscious mind has a creative capacity to add an extra elephant and square it off well and even it off. We have to learn the art of plus one. Normally, problems beset us, not face on, when we are occupied with some other concern, just idly brushing the teeth or something like that in the morning, or walking idly in a park. The unconscious field is taken with us, and we must creatively produce a plus one until it all squares well. And so there's no way any student can put a question to a teacher, answer me, and the teacher give a direct answer. The teacher would wisely say, please bide your time, stay with me a while, a year or so, and see what happens. Stay, observe, study, talk, internally shuffle all your thought forces till you get an adequate supply of ideas and supplementary facts. And whenever two facts don't agree, then bring a third one in. That'll be necessary to make a complete unit. Then you must improvise a little bit from within, and you must do it creatively. So for this reason, any student interested in a subject, such as the ultimate truth or the absolute truth, will come to a teacher with both parties understanding the subtle nature of it. And the teacher won't immediately invite questions or answer any questions. Of course, questions may well be there and everybody may be aware of them, but he will say, wait for 1 year. And what will you do in that year? You'll learn to shuffle your ideas a little bit. You'll learn to study. You'll learn to worship. You'll learn to control the senses. You will learn chastity. You will learn faith. And in this way, with a disciplined life, you'll proceed. And then at the end of, let's say, 1 year, you can ask some questions. Now, twice a week, people have the opportunity to ask questions related to the Vedanta philosophy. We have it on a Sunday morning and a Wednesday evening. And then also informally, many people contact me and ask various questions, and we may spend an hour or something together, almost on a daily basis. All of these people vary in their enthusiasm. Some people are curious. The curious people, we won't spend much time on, but those who are keen, those who are thirsty, those who want to pursue the truth, that's a different thing. Now we are studying then some questions that are raised, and the title of the Upanishad is the 6 questions raised, Prasna. So when we invite people to ask questions, very often there's a silence and no questions can be answered. And it's not that there are no questions, but they have not had time to shuffle their ideas around, where something occurs to them and they decide to bring it out. It might be that even before they bring it out, their subconscious creative mind has supplied some solution. But when something is outstanding, then a teacher is required. Now, the Prasna Upanishad has 6 important questions to ask, but they're not questions out of the blue. Because the Prasna Upanishad is actually a part of the Atharva Veda. And the Atharva Veda has some other Upanishads in it. And principally, the Prasna Upanishad and the Mundaka Upanishad go hand in hand. And so there are some assumptions made in the Mundaka Upanishad that the Prasna Upanishad will address even from the start. In the Mundaka Upanishad, in the first section, and the second part, and the 13th stanza, we see, Saha Vidwan, it begins like that enlightened one, the teacher who has realized Brahman, he should be approached. To him who approaches duly, whose heart is calm and whose outer organs are under control, that man of enlightenment should adequately impart that knowledge of Brahman. One who is calm of heart, peaceful in mind, attuned to Brahman, is duty bound to share that enlightenment, that knowledge. And that is a teacher. So impart that knowledge of Brahman by which what? By which one realizes the true and immutable Purusha, this term is used. So immediately we have a term to work with. It's a curious term, Purusha. Purusha derived from two conjoined aspects. One is Puri, a city, and the other is Purna. That means all-pervasive fullness, of totality. And so if we have a Purusha, a self, a person, that is an indwelling, we can't imply that there's a limitation. We have to say that it is all full, actually. It is not imprisoned, as many people think or seem to think or seem to imply or have this concept. It is full, it is free, it is always full, it is always free. There was never any emptiness in it. There were no voids or gaps in it. It was always there, like a grand ocean, always there. And so there are 6 questioners who come. And the advantage of the Upanishads is it doesn't highlight any personality. Because although we know the names of the teacher, we know the names of the student, and we know by virtue of their names their heritage also, and their place mentioned in some other Upanishads. Even so, these are faceless people. We have no idea what they had for breakfast, or we have no idea what their particular characteristics were. All we know is that they were all keen. They were all thirsty. Now, the Mundaka Upanishad has described knowledge in 2 parts. There's a lower knowledge, there's a higher knowledge. And many of their antecedents and families would have been interested in only the one aspect. But these are interested in the higher aspect. These are interested in what is called Brahman. And so their intent, devoted to Brahman, intent on Brahman, and seeking the highest Brahman, they approach a revered teacher. Now, the teacher's name is Pipalada. And Pipalada, of course, by virtue of the name, we can immediately see some connection between that person and the people tree. In other words, some entity that is implied that he spent many, many years at some point meditating and he got enlightened, just as Buddha was enlightened. So this particular people tree, this is the origin of this name, Pipalada. So in the very beginning of this Prasna Upanishad, there is an introductory commentary on the background to the questions themselves. This Brahmana, that is the Brahmana portion of the Atharva Veda, it begins as an elaborate reiteration of the subject matter already dealt with in the mantra portion of the Mundaka Upanishad. And of course, the story is in the form of various questions asked, and these questions will represent a step-by-step internal inquiry, going deeper and deeper and deeper into subtler and subtler areas, typically going from the outside progressively to the inside, because any teacher will not want it any other way. You can't just jump to the highest conclusion in one go. No one will understand you. You have to lead somebody by the hand and progressively move them onwards. So knowledge is thus praised, and rishis, of course, are there for eulogizing knowledge, as we found out from the Mundaka Upanishad itself. And so this brahmacharya, these disciples, they come, and the idea of calling them brahmacharya is self-evident, because not only is it the word for student, but the implication is that these students are by nature chaste, disciplined, and desirous and thirsty for the innermost subtle truth. So what are these questions? Some people find it easy just to deal with the questions in an overview form and then drill down into the details. So that's what I'm going to do. These questions go something like this. In the Mundaka Upanishad, we find an inference which suggests that creatures are there, creatures are born. If we just come to the relevant passage from the Mundaka Upanishad. And I'm referring to another passage. There is a reference here from him. That is, it's an implied source. Some source is there. There's an implication in the Mundaka Upanishad that there is this Purusha already mentioned, and that it is transcendental. Since that entity is formless, and since he is coextensive with all that is external and internal, and since he is birthless, therefore he is maybe without vital force. Maybe this entity has to be self-contained. And that arises a curiosity. What is this force that we call life? We can identify it everywhere. And breathing is a symptom of it. And since he is birthless, where is he coming from? He's birthless, without vital force, without mind, pure and superior to another one, that is the immutable Maya. And Maya is used for something that is like a magic. From him, from that one, from that Purusha, says the third stanza of the second section, first part, from him originates the vital force, as well as the mind, all the senses, space, air, fire, water, earth, that supports everything. That is, this very Purusha that is supposed to be the seed, this ita smart, from this, of name and form, Jayati, originates what? The prana, the vital force. That's the object of modifications of things such as lack of knowledge, nescience, that we all suffer from, exists only in name, and is essentially unreal in accordance with another Vedic text taken from the Chandogya Upanishad. That is, all modification of speech only as its support. It is unreal. So in this way, the mind and all the senses, as well as the objects, originate from this one. That means there's an immediate question that can arise. And the question is, if all these forms are there and there is one, then my question is, what is the nature of that one? The first question, therefore, goes something like this. It says, and we won't bother who asked the question, but just coincidentally, we say Sukesha. Sukesha is the son of Bharadwaja. But these are all faceless people. And the only person we could maybe recognize might be Kabandi, because Kabandi, a descendant of Katya, coincidentally, this name is also mentioned in connection with Buddha, and so people date this to that time. But there's no reason why that should be the case. It could be any name of ancient origin. So all of these antecedents of the family antecedents of these people, they were all devoted to the inferior entity. You can say inferior Brahman, all to do with intention and rituals and thought movements, to do with this life, to do with the lower knowledge. But these students, they were interested in the higher knowledge. And so they were intent on a search of the Supreme Brahman. Approached, how do you approach a teacher now? So you approach a teacher typically with faggots or fuel in hand, and they approach the Venerable Pipalada, and they approach with this belief that this great teacher, this one, has been selected, will certainly tell us all those things. And what do you think the teacher tells them? It said, go and wait a year. So, having approached him, the one person asked the question, and the year applies to all of them. And it says, Venerable Sir, from what indeed are all these beings born? Now, it's a very profound question because it's a question that everybody's still asking today. Today, cosmologists are still asking this question, this variegation of creatures. And when you say creatures, it means everything that moves, everything that is created. So there's an assumption that there's a creation, and therefore there is a creator. But the creator is not really in the sense of an independent entity that has a resource, something like a storehouse, or suddenly magically creates something from nothing. This ex nihilo is one of three possibilities to do with creation. That you can have either nothing making something from nothing. That's the current kind of cosmological point of view. Or you can have something making something out of nothing. That's a theological point of view that is relevant to many people. Many religions have that. But here, understanding this oneness, this is not the case. And in this sense, Purusha and Prajapati, that is the Lord of all creatures, or otherwise termed cosmic mind, this is really one and the same thing. This is the source. In this sense, this is the creator. And then in Hindu mythology, call this Brahma. Brahma, that is the creator, derived from the same root as Brahman. This Brah is there, the idea that there's an expansiveness. But Brahma signified as something different, as a creator. We can see it in art forms as an entity with four heads indicating every single possible direction, a kind of omniscience and omnipresence being indicated, knowing every direction. And from his thought, characterized as a kind of desire, let me be many, not let me make something from nothing, or nothing making something from nothing, but let me make from myself. So this is all indicated. But of course, it's not the immediate answer. Go away for 1 year. And so the Lord of all creatures became desirous of progeny is the answer. And he deliberated on the past Vedic knowledge. That is, within him was all the knowledge of how to create the universe. And in the Hindu system, of course, at the end of a total eon age, where everything gets withdrawn back into a sense of potentiality, then a new Brahma comes out. And if it's within the same kind of cycle, then the old Brahma comes out. But if it's a brand new cycle, the new Brahma comes out. That's the way the Hindu mind observes it or understands it. So this Kabandi, he wanted to know the source of creation. He wanted to know the source of the deity, or the deity who was manifesting, or responsible at least for manifesting all these life forms. Because creation itself is a mystery. And it remains a mystery today. Many people simply just accept it. But why should we accept it? So even now in this age, we're not sure how life began on Earth. We don't know what is their biogenesis. This is a question mark. There are many speculations. Maybe it came from a volcanic action. Maybe it came from outer space. Maybe there was some kind of floating material in space, a meteorite that crashed into the Earth, and it was laden with small organic cellular carbon-laden creatures. And from there, they simply multiplied. But this is all speculation and doesn't answer the fundamental question that who created or what created these single-cell organisms in the first place? So you still have your problem. You're just kicking the can down the road. Even if science manages to find out the truth concerning our creation, it won't be able to fathom the reasons for it. Why did it occur? And no scientist, of course, can tell us why the world came into existence or why beings were manifested upon the earth. in what we describe as Goldilocks conditions. That is, where we orbit a very ordinary single sun, with most solar systems having two of them, where we're located on the outer suburbs of our galaxy, where the busy traffic spins around in the center of the black hole at enormous speeds and ultimately gets swallowed up there, where everything is chaotic. We sail around in comparative obscurity, in calm peace, with the earth spinning on its axis to create at least seasons, at least 5 seasons. The Hindu tradition has 6, but 2 of them are winter. We combine them into 1. So 5 seasons are there. And this will also be mentioned in this explicit way, where we start off and get into more details, more comprehensive details for the student's purpose. So having brooded on that knowledge, having made a kind of desire, this Lord of all creatures, this Prajapati, created 2 things, and from those 2 things other things came. Now here we become scientific. What are those 2 things? Matter and energy. And matter is also related or termed as a kind of food. It is termed Rai and is feminine in gender. And energy is, or life is, prana. So the life is there, prana. And we learned also from our passage that we read in the Mundaka Upanishad that this prana came from that entity that had no prana. But from itself, it was made. And so it's not that we require a second manufacturing plant or a stock of secondhand material for things to come. And we don't have anything ex nihilo, and we don't have an ad infinitum problem. That means we don't have to ask who made that material, who made that, who made that, who made that, and we go backwards. So prana is life, and it's also masculine in gender. Now we have a picture, a kind of marriage between prana and food or matter. And food is consumed and is the consumer. We get that kind of image. These 2 are interpreted in this way, a kind of food and eater. And here we have a duality of primary existence, answering to matter and form, that we also find in Greek philosophy in Aristotle. The applications of this duality comes out next in a kind of strange way. And if we're not careful, a disconnected way, because we then go into an image of one of the oldest mantras, that is the Gayatri mantra. You see, the sun represents everything that divinity represents. It's a life giver. It knows every corner. It radiates everywhere. It's beautiful. It's radiant. All of that is characteristic of the sun. And so there's an analogy that comes out, which shouldn't really be taken literally, but should be taken in an exemplary way, that the sun represents this divinity. The divinity in the sense of this life energy. We can say, if we like, the highest principle dressed up as life energy and expressing itself as life energy and lending its life everywhere. The passage is actually extremely beautiful. Adityo ha vai pranaha, rayir eva chandramaha, rayir va itat sarvam yan murtam cha murtam cha, tasmat murtye eva rahi. That is Adityo. Aditi, the first child of Iditi. That is the mother of all the other deities, all the other illuminating factors. And the primary one that is given to us from our point of view is the sun. We call it Aditya. The sun indeed is life. The sun indeed is truly prana. And also Rai is food. And also is truly itself the moon. Now, all these passages in the Upanishads are highly meditative. So we can now see 2 eyes, as it were, the sun and the moon, playing a a related dance, a cooperative dance. But the moon has no light of its own. The moon is just rock and dust, silica, battered by meteorites to give it a kind of face. But actually we can walk on it. We can't walk on the sun, but we can walk on the moon. And we can bring back rocks from it. We can kick up dust on the moon. And the moon has a different gravity. The moon is smaller size to the Earth. But the moon also has a cooperative relationship with the Earth itself. What a beautiful rhythmic arrangement there is. But what is the one that gives us life, that we can describe as prana, energy? Namely this drama that plays in the core of the sun, starting off with hydrogen, and then fusing to helium. And then by the time it comes out to the surface, many millions and millions of years, and radiates outward with cosmic rays that are deflected by the magnetic field of the Earth. If it wasn't for that, all life would cease. We would all perish. And yet, this peculiar life-giving Earth and this life-giving planet that is infused with the sun's energy, what a wonderful place. What a wonderful, unique place for us. And when I say unique, of course, people speculate today that statistically there must be many more Earths elsewhere, and we won't deny that. But so far, we have no evidence of it. All we know is this planet Earth, this blue planet Earth, that we have decided to change in a radical way. And so, matter itself is the moon, and matter is truly all this, and wherever is formed and formless. Therefore, whatever is formed is itself matter. Whatever has shape and form is matter. Whatever has solidity and those qualities, that is matter. Whatever is gross or subtle is actually only matter or food, rai. The gross as distinguished from the subtle, that's certainly food. So this projected couple of the sun and the moon become identified with the primary movement, the primary creation of these two things, from which all these other things have come. And thus successively, this creator, this Prajapati, has produced, but not become identified with some aspects of it. Now, this leads then on to another aspect. So, the sun after rising enters the eastern side. That means the sun rays cover, first of all, the east portion of the sky. And by that, he bathes in his rays all life that is in the east. So it's an image now of the creative aspect of this prana, of this life, radiating everywhere, throughout everything. And when he illumines all the other sides of the south, the west, the north, below, above, and in between, and by that he bathes in his rays all living beings, we can have a whole meditation on this. If the sun represents this life energy, and this life energy is the same as this Prajapati, that wishing, desiring more, desiring other beings, desiring that from his sheer will, he projects. So while we say create, really it's project. Shristi, projecting this from himself, no other entity necessary. Raye evanam. So this then is termed Vaishvanara. Now we've heard the Vaishvanara in a number of different contexts. But Vishwa is when we see that life force penetrating the waking state, or the familiar state of the earth, our normal waking life. We go about our business in its environment. But the we of it is the Nara, men. So the life of man is he. And the fire, because there's a heatedness to it. How do you know a person is alive? You look for the warm breath. You look for the temperature. So every form of life and fire who rises every day. And this very teaching is declared in a particular verse that is contained in the Rig Veda. The verse goes, Naraha jivaha vishve cha te naras cha vishvanaraha sa eva vaishvanaraha sarva jivatma kaha vishvarupa sarva prapanchat atmakaha iti bedaha. That is to say that the Vaishvanara is said to be the essence of all living beings according to the Rig Veda, while, of course, in contrast, Visharupa is said to be the essence of the whole cosmos, not just the life on earth, not just man, but the whole cosmos. So, who has all the forms? Vishwarupam Harinam Jata Vedasam Parayanam Jyotir Ekam Tipantam. Who has all forms, the golden one, the all-knowing, the goal of all, the goal to which, the ideal to which we all unknowingly or knowingly are progressing toward, the sole light, the giver of heat, possessing 1,000 rays. That means unlimited, existing as 100 forms. Thus rises the sun, the life of all creation. So the purport of this really is that the sun in many systems of ancient times really is regarded as the infinite life of all beings. Shortly a while ago, from 7 to 8, last portion, I did a meditation, and that guided meditation steered us toward the idea of visualizing the sun and identifying with the sun as a life giver, nothing more than prana. Then what about the rule? How does the sun rule? How do we register the movement of the sun in this time? We do it through the basis of its movement throughout the year. And so the year truly is the Lord of creation. Of it, there are two paths. And this we find this theme coming out in so many of the Upanishads. So we find the southern path and the northern path. And right now, we're headed so that the days are longer here in Ireland in the northern hemisphere. And now those truly who worship, thinking, sacrifice, and pious acts are our work, that is, the antecedents of the inquirers, those who are only interested in those occupations, no doubt pious and good works, but with a motive, with some kind of ideal in mind of an effect, some kind of reward for their deeds. Well, they win only the human world. In other words, those pursuing matter will come back to matter. And they certainly return again, because we all have to return at some point in the human form where Vaishvanara reigns. And therefore, the wise people take the other path. Those took the lower knowledge. We want to take the higher knowledge, desirous of offspring also, taking the southern route, that which is called the path of ancestors. That is truly the matter. All of those people go in that direction. So the southern route is the material path, the path of the moon, where we perform acts with selfish desires. And these acts are of these two kinds, this ishta and this purta. And ishta will relate to acts of ceremonial piety, rituals, and so on that we find in every temple, in every church, in every religion. And Swami Vivekananda would put these as secondary details. And so we get a secondary outcome from them. But the higher rewards going toward the Supreme Brahman, that's different for those who seek for the self. Now, how would you do that? Not by ritual, not by doctrine, by dogma, not by studious intellectual study, none of these, not by good works, none of these, but who seek the self. Immediately we have this cosmic entity and this individual entity merging into the one entity, self. How is it done? By austerity, chastity, faith, and knowledge. These four things. What do we mean by austerity? It means disciplining the outer senses, making sure that we don't succumb to the slavery of the senses, eyes, ears, etc. And then the organs of information, the organs of action. And one of the most difficult to deal with will be this chastity, this urge to propagate the species. And so that is also there. Now, this chastity is different from celibacy. And the Prasna Upanishad will bring this out. Even if we skip ahead to find out, the day and night, truly the Lord of creature of this day indeed is life, and the night truly is matter, comparing the two of night and day of opposites, one representing matter, one representing energy. And they who join in sexual intercourse by day spill their life, and they that join in the same thing by night, that is chastity indeed. In fact, you see it's clear from this verse that what we call brahmacharya, or chastity, is not abstinence necessarily. For monks, of course it is. Monks and nuns it is. But for householders, it is to do with control, self-control. And with all their exaltation of celibacy in these Upanishads, they also recognize the value of married life. This can be brought out particularly in the teachings of our most modern sages, Sri Ramakrishna, who was the ideal husband, but he was completely celibate. So he was also the ideal monk. He was also the ideal teacher. He was also the ideal student. In every way, he was the ideal. But he had householders there, and he encouraged people to remain householders. And he had people who led a dedicated renunciate life, his monks, and at least one nun, really, in the form of Gaurima. So, we jumped ahead a little bit because in this analogy, we can continue. And the austerity, chastity, and faith. So now we understand what the first two mean, and then what is faith. So last week I mentioned a wonderful saying from Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, founder of Zoroastrianism. And he was saying how belief is faith in the unknown. And then he says, and faith is belief in the known. So what is faith? Faith is belief in the known. That is, it's an unwavering conviction. In what? In oneself, in one's guru, in the scripture, and in God. All of these. Those who have that, who engender that, and who seek that, they go along the northern route toward the sun, as it were. They gain the sun. That truly is the support of life breaths. That is eternal. That's the fearless. That is the final goal of everyone, not just those people. And from that, they do not return, because freedom means freedom from this continuous capturing of matter. And from that, they don't return, and that is the stopping of rebirth for us. About that, some verse is there. What is this verse? It goes on like this. Panchapadam Pitaram. They speak of him as Father, having 5 feet. What are these 5 feet? These are the 5 seasons. Now, most systems, as I mentioned before, have 6 seasons, but there are the 5 mentioned here, which correspond to autumn, summer, spring, winter, monsoon season. So those are mentioned. So we can imagine then that all the seasons are seasons that represent life for us. 12 forms are there, the 12 months of the year, seated in the higher half of the heavens, full of water, that is to be found in the non-material area. And others, they again speak of him as omniscient, all-knowing, knowing every place, every corner, just as the sun knows every corner, and set on a chariot of 7 wheels and 6 spokes, just as the sun does. So time is ever on the move in the form of 7 horses and 6 seasons. Then the month truly is the Lord of creation. Of this, the dark half is matter, the bright half is life, and therefore the seers perform sacrifices in the bright half, the others in the other half, and that is why there are certain seasons for religious rituals. The reality is that there's this distinction between matter and form that also is being stressed. And then we said that day and night are truly the Lord of creation. Of this, day is life, night is matter. That is, they represent these things. But we can see them also as well. Since there's only one entity, and they who join in together, they would use the advantage of night rather than day. Food indeed is the Lord of creation. Anam vai prajapati. The Lord of creation. From this truly is all the seeds of every creature. And from this all creatures are born. Thus, those who practice all the rules connected with creation, they perpetuate the creation, called procreation. And to them alone is this Brahma world in whom austerity, chastity, and truth are established. To them is that stainless Brahma world, in whom there is no crookedness, falsehood, or trickery. The morals and ethics of the highest standards have to be there. And the name for this trickery is Maya Cheti. Tesham asu virajo brahma loko na yesu jipam andratam na mai cheti. And from this, of course, the term Maya has been adopted. The use of the word Maya is led to the view, of course, that the world is deceptive in its character, is a kind of apparitional field where we make the mistake about our interpretation of the universe. Shankaracharya makes this point. He says, Maya nama bahye anyatatmanam pragasha nyativa karyam karoti sa maya mityachara rupa. The use of this word led to a view that the world is deceptive in its character. So then, that is the first question. The other questions are like this. Having understood then the source of creation, the next obvious question would be, but all these different forces and energies that we find described as devas or illuminating factors or life-giving factors, where do they come from? Where do they come into the picture of it? So in short, what are the forces of nature? And we can ask a little bit further, how do they get resolved? And the description is, they are all these particular tattvas, subtle elements which are there, creative forces which are there that combine, but they all come from this pair. And the highest and most subtle of them all is prana. So it all comes back again to prana. But then the next obvious question would be about human life. Where does the particular prana and human life come? Since we are told in the Mundaka Upanishad that this prana is distributed 5 different ways. And so what is that all about is the next obvious question. But it comes back all to one entity, one unity, one single energy. And then the Mundaka Upanishad gives us a description. Om is like, and it is described as, there's a bow, there's an arrow, there's a target, and this is all like Om is a bow. And so if we are to repeat this Om and consider the practice, having done away with the theory now, then what is the practical use of it? What benefit does it give me? That's the other question that has to be given, all related to the Mundaka Upanishad. But before that, what is the basis of sleep? We know that this Vaishvanara, this Vishwa related to Nara is one aspect, but there's a sleep also. Where does the energy go in terms of that? So the question of all these three states of consciousness is also addressed in this. And then finally, the question arises. We are told again in the Mundaka Upanishad that there's an entity comprised of 16 parts. A Purusha has 16 parts. So what are these 16 parts? And why should this cosmic person have any parts at all? And of course, the answer is that cosmic person, and it comes back to the original question, how beautifully rounded off. The original question is, what is the source? And the last question leads us back there. So this is an overview of the remaining questions. We might pick this up next week, of course, and continue with the second question, third and fourth and fifth and sixth questions, and see how this can assist us, not only in the practice of meditation, but in our understanding of where we are, who we are, where we live, and in what circumstances, and what is the sense of it. And having understood the principles, how can we now intensify our practice, which ideally is a practice of external austerity, internal control, faith, and the other qualities which are mentioned. All of these qualities are sub-qualities of selflessness. So let us now finish that off. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Please do us the favor, if you like this channel, of subscribing. Adding to our numbers assists us. And so with that, we leave you in peace. Peace, peace, peace be unto all of you.